Hello and welcome to our series of Family U Chats. We are super excited that you are here with us today. Family U Chats is our family webinar series where we partner with different folks on campus to make sure that you all receive the information that you need. And so we try to make sure that the information is timely and really about what is going on campus right now. We have several webinars this week. We had one yesterday about disability services, and you can watch that recording. We have one today about new student advising and course registration. And then tomorrow we have one about the Bursar's office and that upcoming bill. And so you have lots of opportunities to engage with different folks on campus and get your questions answered. As always, our family U chats are recorded and they're available on our Facebook and on our website. We're really excited today to be joined by Alicia Brennan, and she's going to talk to you all about new student advising and course registration. If you all will hold your questions until the end, and then we'll take them and put them in the Q&A feature. But we're super excited that you're here, and I'm going to turn it over to Alicia.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Jonathan. Good afternoon. Excited to be here with you all. My name is Alicia Brennan, and I work in UMass Amherst Undergraduate Student Success Office. And my title is the Director of Student Success Persistence Programs and Advising Support, which is a really long title, essentially to say that what I get to do is work in training and supporting all of the amazing academic advisors across our campus that work directly with all of our students, helping them choose courses, helping them think about degree progression and progress, helping them think about all of the co-curricular activities and experiential learning opportunities that UMass has to offer. And I also oversee some of our initiatives and programs that are focused on student persistence at the university and persistence in their courses and making sure that folks are academically doing well. And as Jonathan said, I'm here today to talk about advising and course registration. 'Tis the season. It's very much on the minds of our students right now. So I will go through a relatively short PowerPoint that will talk through all of these pieces, and then happy to take questions at the end. So I'm going to pause for a minute and just make sure that I get all of my slides up here, and then I'll go through my presentation. Okay, I hope everyone can see the slides that I have up here. But again, we're going to talk about academic advising and course registration today. So a little overview of what we're going to talk about specifically today. I mentioned that I am one of our directors in our student success unit. I'm going to talk a little bit more about our unit and big picture the work that we do to support students. I'm then going to transition a little closer to the topic of today's webinar and talk about how families and supporters can support students through this advising and course planning process. I will also talk a little bit about academic advising at UMass Amherst and how it's structured. And then I will talk about preparing for spring advising and course registration. So what students can be doing now before they actually go into those advising appointments, before they actually enroll in courses. And then I will talk a little bit about spring course registration in terms of actually enrolling in courses and what that process looks like. So our student success unit, again, where I sit on campus, we are a unit that works at the crossroads of academic affairs and student affairs. We house support, as I said earlier, for academic advising and academic advisors that are working individually with students, but we also have a lot of other programs and initiatives that I want to highlight today. So we have programs that promote financial literacy through our Smart About Money program. We provide a free electronic planner to students, as well as a website that encompasses a lot of different resources about thinking about how to manage your time more broadly. We offer our Success Toolkit series, which are academic skill building workshops on topics like time management and preparing for finals. We oversee ways to study outside of UMass Amherst through our domestic exchange program, which is students have an ability to study at one of more than 170 other institutions within the United States. So kind of like study abroad, but within the US. And through our 5-college interchange program, where students can take a course at one of our other 4 colleges and our 5-college consortium locally. So a way to study outside of UMass and not leave the Pioneer Valley. We also oversee our residential academic programs, or our RAP. So some of your students may be in these living learning communities. If you have first-year students, they're taking a course together with students that live on their floor or live in their building with them. And our first-year seminar program, again, if you have first-year students, they are likely enrolled in a first-year seminar, which is doing a lot of that demystifying college and a lot of that transition support and content. We also provide outreach and support for our first generation and our transfer student community, specifically through newsletters and events and various other initiatives throughout the academic year. If you're interested in learning more about our unit or our work, we have a website, which is umass.edu/student success, and there's tons of information there about all of these programs and some others that I didn't really talk about. And we also have an Instagram account that's @successumass. That is much more fun. You get to see photos of our students and our various events, and some, pictures of campus and things like that. So please follow us on Instagram if you're interested in hearing about more of the work that we do, and also kind of following the academic cycle, because we post about what's kind of upcoming and happening in those weeks and that month. So transitioning to think more specifically about our topic for today, which is advising and course registration for the spring. I want to talk a little bit about what families and supporters can do to support students in this course planning process. So big picture, when I talk about this sort of family and supporters, and when I talk more broadly about kind of this advising process, I am speaking to multiple perspectives of the folks on this call. So I know we may have some family and supporters of first-year students that have never done advising and course registration before in a collegiate setting. We have some folks of returning students that have done this perhaps multiple times before at UMass, and we have some family and supporters of transfer students that maybe have done this before, but not at UMass, sort of navigating UMass systems. For some of our folks who are have first-year students, or this is their first time that they're navigating advising and course registration in a college environment, one of the biggest questions that we get is sort of, what are some of these differences between what students may have experienced in high school or even at another institution? Because we know that these processes look really different, and transfer students have that transition process as well. So I really want to talk a little bit about kind of in this moment, sort of at UMass Amherst and our context, what can family and supporters do to support students throughout this process? So the first thing I think it's important to mention is to support your student being in the driver's seat of this process. So students are ultimately the folks who are making all of these decisions. They're selecting their courses, they're registering for courses. They are really the decision maker here of what this is going to look like and what choices they're going to make. And of course, they're making those choices with good guidance and support from their academic advisors and you all in this call, but ultimately, they are the person who's driving these decisions forward and making these choices. The other thing we like to talk to families and supporters about is this idea of encouraging agency and follow through and curiosity in your students. I think follow through is particularly important to mention here. We'll sort of talk through some of the timeline of what this process looks like, but you'll come away with this sort of seeing that there's multiple steps in terms of what students need to do to ultimately be registered for a schedule for spring. And these things happen over various weeks. So really encouraging that, like, okay, what's the next step, making sure that students are sort of following through, they understand what they need to do, they feel like they have a sense of agency to seek out answers to their questions, they know who to ask, and they feel empowered to do that. And just generally curiosity throughout this whole process. I feel like, registering for courses, it can feel sort of rote of just, okay, I need these 5 classes to continue on. But often I feel like students, there's something about these semester classes that spark an interest for them or a curiosity, or they learn something they didn't know that they could pursue in terms of an opportunity, and really just kind of like fostering that, like kind of exploring those avenues that seem interesting. Continue to ask questions, continue to explore, because there's lots of opportunities and engagement that can really open up through just kind of that initial question or interest. And then finally, we like to talk about this idea of our families and supporters prioritizing asking questions rather than providing answers to the student, to help students define their goals, think through all of these various decisions and options, and to make meaning of their current experiences and future experiences. So now I'm going to transition to talking a little bit about the structure of academic advising at UMass and sort of what this all looks like. Academic advising at UMass is organized as the school college, as what we call this academic home base. So all of our majors at UMass are associated with a particular school or college. So if you don't know what school or college your student's major is within, I would encourage you to ask them or to do some light Googling to see what you can find, because I think that's really important to sort of understand what school or college your student is associated with and where that academic home base is. Each school or college also has a central academic advising center. And I usually say that, like, when in doubt, know where that is, and that is a place that students can go if they have questions, but anything related to academic advising, course registration, or how to navigate many of these processes. So many of our schools and colleges, the advisors live in the specific departments. So you might be a major in political science and have an advising team in that department that is working with you, and that's who you're meeting with. But you also have this advising center in this College of Social and Behavioral Sciences as well. And those folks work in partnership with one another and are very close colleagues and are very connected. So if a student really doesn't know where to go, they end up in the SBS sort of central advising center. The folks there can help students figure out where to go and how to navigate the systems or answer many basic questions that they have. So again, when in doubt, that school college advising center sort of is the go-to resource to then help navigate from that point on. Thinking specifically about majors, want to talk a little bit about our primary and secondary major and program advisors. And when I use this term program rather than major, we have some of our first year students and even some of our second year students are in what we call exploratory track programs. So they're students that haven't declared a major yet, but they are associated with a particular school or college. So whether you have a declared major or you're in one of our ET programs, you have an advisor, either an individual advisor or a small team of advisors. That person, students can find either that individual advisor's name or information about that team of advisors that is going to work with them on their Spire homepage, which is our sort of student information system. There's a tile that they can see on that homepage that they can click on that will then take them to the names or the list of the teams that will be advising them. So all students have an advisor or a team of advisors that are working with them, because every student is associated with at least one declared major or declared program. We also have some students that have multiple majors. So they're double majors, they're double majors pursuing two majors. But we also have students that are pursuing minors or certificates, and those students will also have an additional advisor that's associated with that program. So I may be a political science major and I have an advisor in that department or a team of advisors that I'm working with, but I'm also pursuing an international relations certificate. And I have a separate advisor that is specializing in the international relations certificate that I talk to specifically about course selection and progress for that certificate. So I may be meeting with multiple people depending on how many credentials I'm pursuing, if it's a certificate or a minor or multiple majors. And then we also have what we think of as supplemental advising. So these are our advisors that work with students who are pursuing a pre-health track. So maybe they want to be a physician's assistant and they are, they're majoring in chemistry, but they need to make sure that they're taking all of the correct courses that will set them up to apply to a physician's assistant program after undergraduate. We also have pre-med advising for students of any major that are thinking about pursuing medical school. Same for pre-law law, students from across the university, any major that might be thinking about law school. We have an advisor dedicated to helping students think through that process, course plan, and then obviously think about the application process as well. Students in our Commonwealth Honors College will also have an advisor associated with their honors program where they can talk about course progression and making sure that they're taking the correct courses to complete the honors component of their degree. And then students who are varsity athletes also have access to our athletics academic success unit and all the staff there to help students really think about balancing the unique challenges of an extremely rigorous practice and game schedule along with their academic scheduling needs and pursuits. And I also just want to mention, in terms of some of the structural pieces of this, our registrar's office is the unit on campus that houses the course selection infrastructure. So we think about how do students actually, where do they view classes? Where do they register for classes? Or who owns that infrastructure, that technology? That is our registrar's office. That includes Spire, which is our student information system, which houses a variety of other things like finances, et cetera, and a tool called Schedule Builder, which I'll talk about a little bit later, which is a way for students to sort of course plan, build their schedules, and enroll. So if students have particular questions about navigating any of that kind of technology, the registrar's office staff are available. They have a live chat during business hours on their website. Students can chat with them, email, phone call, show up in person. So they're very accessible if there's sort of technical questions about how to access any of the systems associated with registration. So moving forward to thinking about preparing for spring advising and course registration. So what can students do at this point before they can actually go into Spire and register for courses? So the first thing I think is really important is for students at this point, before they can actually go in and register, before they meet with an advisor, is to use Spire to identify whether they have any what we call registration holds. So those are things that will prevent a student from registering for courses on their on the date and time in which they're eligible to do so. That can be as simple as a parking ticket. You have an overdue parking ticket. Maybe some of our new students didn't quite get all of their immunization paperwork together and we really need that information. So we sort of put this hold in place to ensure that students are completing these very key components and things that we need them to do. So it's important to identify those things early so students still have time to resolve any of those issues before the date that they can enroll, so it doesn't sort of slow down or delay their ability to roll in classes. The other thing that students can do now is go into Spire and know when their enrollment appointment is. So an enrollment appointment, it's separate from the advising meeting, but really what that is, it's the date and time in which a student can begin registering for spring classes. So for example, if I'm a first-year student, I may be assigned an enrollment appointment and see Inspire November 22nd at 3 p.m. That means that on November 22nd at 3 p.m., that's when I can actually go into Spire and click enroll and enroll in courses. So ideally, if I'm enrolling in courses on November 22nd at 3 p.m., I should have already had my advising appointment before that date. So I think it's really important to know what your enrollment appointment is early. So you can sort of know, when do I need to schedule my advising appointment before? So I'm prepared for that moment. I know what classes I'm going to enroll in, and I'm going to go and do that enrollment process on that earliest date. The other thing I think is helpful for students to do at this point is start thinking about and playing around with spring classes in Spire. Search for classes, see what's there, see what seems interesting, throw a couple things into your shopping cart in Spire, which is sort of like the holding cell for classes. So it's like the Amazon shopping cart. You can go in and search around for classes. These 7 seem interesting. I'm going to save them essentially in my shopping cart for later. And then if I want to enroll in any of them, it's as easy as checking it off and clicking enroll. So giving a little thought to this, what seems interesting, what's there. I find that creates a much richer conversation with an advisor if students are coming in slightly prepared in terms of what things might interest them. Also would recommend for students to keep an eye on their email from an email from their advisor or their school or college about advising appointments. Many of these emails have already gone out to students, so many of them have already received these and are already scheduling appointments. But if they've missed that or it hasn't gone out yet, keep an eye out for that email. It will contain information about the process for students to use for their individual major in terms of how to schedule. Sometimes that is through our Navigate 360 Student Success Management platform, so they can make appointments online through a technology platform. Sometimes that's as easy as emailing back your advisor and agreeing on a time. So finding that email, really understanding what that process looks like for their individual advisor is really helpful. And then lastly, scheduling that advising appointment through using the instructions that were outlined in that email from the advisor or from the school or college. And again, really thinking about ensuring that that advising appointment happens before whatever date is listed in Spire as the enrollment appointment, so students are prepared to actually enroll on that date. In terms of what happens in that advising conversation, as you can imagine, much of what's discussed is thinking about course selection for the next semester and the bigger picture about degree progression, making sure that if you are a second semester sophomore in the spring, that you are generally on track to complete your degree in the remaining semesters that you have within your 4 years. So doing that kind of big picture check. But often advisors and students are talking about longer term planning and goals and how those goals can relate to course selection for the previous semester and general degree progression. So we may be having a conversation about spring classes, but you mentioned you're interested in studying abroad next year. We may have a different conversation about, well, why don't you take these courses this spring, and that will free up these other requirements to take next year while you're abroad. It will offer you more flexibility, etc. So we can frame these very specific conversations about next semester course planning, thinking about longer term goals, and making sure that we're sort of holding space for all of these things that you're saying that you're interested in. The other thing I like to mention in terms of kind of thinking about prep and planning for spring advising and course registration is a tool called the Guide to Undergraduate Programs, which is an online resource that can be really helpful to students and I think to families and supporters to kind of make sense of some of these undergraduate programs and what are the requirements and what courses should I be taking. Essentially, it is an online resource that lists all of the different programs at UMass, so all of our majors, all of our minors, all of our certificates, and then it offers information about them. So it includes the required courses that students need to take in order to graduate from that major. And it has pages on the major sort of overall big picture. What is this? What courses do I need to take? As well as something called Getting Started. So if students are an ET student and they're thinking about declaring a major or maybe thinking about adding a second major or changing majors, that Getting Started page is really sort of like, where do I start? If I want to change my major to chemistry, what are the introductory courses that I need to take in order to get started on that path? So it can be a really nice place to sort of orient yourself. And then again, think about maybe adding a few of those classes to your shopping cart before you meet with an advisor. So you have some sense of that. Department websites can also be really helpful to explore as well. They will also have information about curriculum and courses, as well as academic advising. So they should talk through who are their advising staff, how do I access a meeting with an academic advisor. So those are really the two resources, the Guide to Undergraduate Programs and those department websites that I think are really helpful in terms of planning and orienting. And then moving to think about sort of our final slide here, thinking about actually registering for courses. So after the student has that advising appointment, they talk through classes, they've got a great idea of the courses that they need to take for the spring based on advisor recommendations and their interests and goals. I recommend that students use that Spire shopping cart, again, sort of that like holding place for courses where they can live before they can actually register, or a tool called Schedule Builder to get organized. Schedule Builder, I mentioned this very briefly, it's another tool to register for classes. I think that this is really helpful, particularly for students that are really visual. So you can go into Schedule Builder, search for your 5 courses that you're interested in, add them to sort of, again, like this kind of cart or like holding cell. These are the 5 classes I'm interested in. And then one of the cool things Schedule Builder does is it will take like all of the sections, like if there's 5 sections of, chemistry 100, it will show you different versions of the schedule, and you can like page through and say, oh, there's 10 different versions of this schedule combining all the sections of these classes I'm interested in taking. Let me visually see what those look like on a weekly grid. You can also put like block out times. Like if you're an athlete and you have practice or you work certain hours, you can say, I can't take classes from 2 to 4 on Wednesdays, and it will build schedules around those times. Like if there's sections of a class that overlap with times you've blocked, it won't show you schedules with those. So it's pretty neat. And students can also register through that system as well. And many of our students really like it and find it to be very easy to use. So really to get organized, put those classes somewhere, whether that's the shopping cart, whether that's schedule builder. And really what I would tell students is have it all set. So when your enrollment appointment opens, all you're doing is clicking enroll. You're making all those decisions. You're getting everything into that shopping cart or into that schedule builder schedule up front. So then the enrollment process is very, very simple because you've done all the work up front. Once that enrollment appointment opens, so again, if I'm a first year student, my enrollment appointment's November 22nd at 3. On November 22nd at 3, I'm going to log back into Spire or Schedule Builder, wherever I've built out my courses in my schedule, and I'm going to actually enroll in those courses to save my spot and to get them onto my my schedule for the spring. Often that goes perfectly, right? Students get every class that they want, great. That's sort of it. And sometimes, you know, a class fills, or, oh, the section I wanted is full, and this other one time conflicts with this other course that I need to take, darn. And I think that I always really encourage students to say, go through that enrollment process. And then if something comes up and you don't know what the alternate course is, this thing filled, you're not really sure what else to take, or you're not really sure, like, do I really have to take this semester? Can I swap it out for something else? I'm not really sure. When in doubt, reconnect with your advisor. When I was working with students as an advisor, I'd sort of have that initial appointment. I'd often see, you know, sometimes students would come back again, or I'd get an email from them, this class is full, what else should I take? And I could really easily say, not a big deal, you can take that in the fall. Here's another thing to think about that you can go search for and add to your schedule to finish out the fall. So sometimes those sort of last minute pivots need to happen, and they can usually be extremely well accommodated, and advisors can offer another course selection if they need to. And then also just to note that students can add courses, drop courses, and swap courses anytime between when their enrollment appointment opens and the end of the add drop period for the spring, which is February 5th this year. So if enrollment opens for me on November 22nd, I can make changes to that schedule anytime between November 22nd and February 5th. So there's a lot of time to think about this, to have a version of this schedule. Think about that. Oh, well, I got this job. The hours aren't going to align with this. Okay, I need to make an adjustment to my schedule. So there's a lot of time to let this breathe. Think about things. If you need to make adjustments, you can, which I think is helpful to give students that longer amount of time to sort of think these things through, have conversations with advisors again if they need to. So that is it for me in terms of my presentation. I've put my email address on here. I'm just abrennan@umass.edu. I welcome emails from folks. If there's anything that I don't answer today, or you just want to connect with me about something else, I'm always happy to hear from folks. And I will stop screen sharing, and I'm happy to take any questions that have come in from folks.
Yeah, so I'm going to just read the questions to you so that you can answer aloud. So
Perfect.
first question is really, it's from a family who says that their students will have to take 19 credits this spring, including English Writing 112, which they didn't take this fall. So what happens if he is unable to? It's a very specific question, but
I mean, I feel like I know that we're doing this sort of like chat feature, but I guess I would be curious about sort of the source of unable. Like, is that in terms of like the timing doesn't work, or that's in terms of like, I'm nervous about taking that many credits?
yeah, so I'll have that family submit
Okay.
a follow-up question so that we can answer that more specifically. The next question is, when will the spring course catalog be available?
It is available now. I'm happy to say it's been out for, I think, a couple weeks at this point. But it is available in Spire for students to search, so they can see the dates and times and instructors and course offerings.
The follow-up question to that was, how do students navigate to that Inspire?
Yes, that is a great question. It is, I have to remind myself of what this all looks like.
I thought the same thing. I was like, oh, I would have to pull up Spire to tell you exactly what buttons to click as you get there. Because sometimes it's a little bit hard for us to remember this exactly step by step.
Let me see, where does that live now? So I believe when students log into Spire, we have moved to sort of a, let me just share screen because I think that will make more sense. Mine looks slightly different because I have a staff view, but the view of it is very
Oh,
similar.
I have a student view if it's more helpful.
Oh, cool. Yeah, I was gonna say, because I think the tiles make more sense when you can actually see it.
Yeah. So let me switch to my student view so folks can see what that looks like. Fun fact, I'm in a PhD program, so I can see this now, which before I
That
did
is
not
that
see.
is the benefit.
Yes, that is a benefit. All right, so this is what the student view looks like. Well,
Perfect.
okay.
So this is sort of when you log into Spire as a student, this is the view, this is the first screen that it takes you to. And I believe if you click class search student view,
Browse course
that
pattern.
is the version that students see.
Mhm.
And then
So-
they can navigate to this advanced search and then search by various criteria. So course subject and number. There's a way to search by gen ed category. So if you're looking for a physical science course and I want to see all the options that complete that gen ed, you can search by gen ed category. You can search by meeting time and day of week and things like that as well. So various ways that you can search in there. So this is the best way in terms of finding what current spring course offerings are. You can also, it will default to showing open classes only. You can see that off to the left there, that's checked. So it will default to that. If you want to see everything, even if it's full, you can uncheck that. Sometimes students they think a class isn't offered, but it's really just like the sections are full. And if you're trying to sort of add it to your shopping cart, maybe to like see if somebody drops over the winter break, that's helpful to know to sort of toggle on and off.
All right, so that is the very specific answer to that question. The next question was, where did they see the enrollment appointment? And was it Inspire? And if so, where exactly?
Yes, it is Inspire. And I believe that is a great question because can you pull up your student view again? I was gonna say my view is different. So
let me go to that. All right. And I don't know if it's the same for undergrads, so, but I would imagine, oh wait, yeah, this is, oh, sorry, wrong view. This is the staff view. This is the student view. Sorry.
let's see.
But imagine it's probably under academics.
Yeah, try academics.
And then, oh, you're really seeing all of my information here. But you can see enrollment information is usually here. But because grad students don't have enrollment appointments in that way.
Oh, that's probably why.
But it's under the academics tab.
Yes, it will be under the academics tab. It's just, yeah, the graduate student view is a little bit different.
So that is the answer to that question. My student met with their advisor, but they still have a question because they're looking to change their major from history to communications. And so who should they reach out to when they're trying to switch majors?
Yes. So each individual department major has slightly different processes in terms of how students can join that major. So often what I tell folks to do is to look on the department website of whatever department you'd like to join. There's often information there about the process, whatever that is. Sometimes it's come to an information session, watch a webinar on our program, or meet with an advisor to talk about this, or meet with a peer advisor. So if they have a process, it should be on their website. It's often also detailed in the getting started pages of the guide to undergraduate programs as well. There's often information there that says, if you want to join, here's the process to do that, in addition to being on the department website. I know that the communication department has a process to join. I believe it's an information session. So students go to an information session and then they sort of follow that process to actually officially declare. But I would sort of start with the department website, read what's there, follow those instructions. If students have any questions about that process, like I read the website, I'm still confused, or I have these questions, I would reach out to an advisor associated with the program that they want to change to. So there will be a list. The department websites typically list advisors associated with those programs. Reach out to one of those advisors with those specific questions. The receiving department, so the department you want to go to, is the expert on what that process looks like, and is usually the best place to go. If you run into any issues with that, the school college advising center can also be helpful. So like the SBS advising center, if you're trying to navigate how to declare a communication major, those folks often are also really connected to those department advisors and understand those processes for all the departments in their school college, and can be helpful in navigating that as well.
The next question says, what is Schedule Builder?
Yes. So Schedule Builder is, I think, a really cool tool. And it is an online platform for students to search for classes, view different schedule options, select a schedule, and then enroll in classes. So like Inspire, you can search for classes. There's a way to, oh, I'm looking for this particular chemistry course, or I'm looking for any class that fulfills a physical science gen ed, to find courses and search for them. And then to say, these are the 5 classes I'm really interested in for next semester. Maybe I'm interested in this particular section of English Writing 112, or any section of Chemistry 111 is fine for me. So I can sort of like be as specific or as general as I want, throw those all into kind of like a holding place, a shopping cart, if you will. And then what I think is cool is it lets you generate schedules from that. So you can say, like, these are the 5 classes I want to take. What are all the combinations of sections that are available? If there's 5 sections of Chem 111 and I don't really care which one I'm in, it will generate schedules sort of in all of those permutations, and you can click through and visually see on like a week-to-week map. Here's what, schedule 1 is heavy Tuesday, Thursday. Schedule 2 is heavy Monday, Wednesday, Friday. Oh, schedule 3 is morning heavy. Schedule 4 is afternoon. And you can really kind of make a decision based on like what the week cadence looks like of those combinations. You can block out time if you work or you have, athletics practice or something like that, and say, I can't take classes Wednesday afternoon, so don't show me schedules that include classes that meet Wednesday afternoon. So I think it's really user-friendly, and it's really good, I think, visual way to make sense of all of the choices. Because some of our classes have many sections, like English Writing 112 is a perfect example of that. And I think it's really helpful to kind of click through all the permutations and see it all, and then say, this is my perfect schedule. Send that and save that. And then when I go to enroll, I can just hit enroll, and I can enroll in that whole schedule that I built.
Our next question says, how long is the appointment? 30 minutes, an hour? How does that work?
For the advising appointment.
Yes.
I would say typically for pre-registration, I would say that those are 30-minute appointments. It can vary location to location. So different advising units, they sort of have control over how long that their individual appointments for different service types are. But I would say that the vast majority of our units are doing 30-minute, 30 minute, course registration appointments.
All right.
The
So
vast
then,
majority are offering those in person and remote as well. So the students have a modality choice in the vast majority of departments.
right. The next question is how long is an enrollment appointment?
Yes. So the enrollment appointment, I think of the enrollment appointment because when you see it in Spire, it lists a date and a time, which I think is very confusing if you don't understand the larger context of this. So you might think, oh my gosh, if it tells me November 22nd at 3 and it's November 24th because I forgot, like now it's over, like I've missed my appointment. But really the way I think of an enrollment appointment is it is the date and time in which you can begin enrolling. So it's sort of the earliest date and time in which the system is going to let you enroll if you try to enroll. So under my example, if I see November 22nd at 3 p.m. and I try to enroll on November 22nd at 1, it's going to say you can't enroll yet. It's not your time. If I go in to try to enroll November 22nd at 3 p.m., it's going to say, great, this is the earliest time that you can do this. It'll accept the enrollment. And enrollment stays open until the end of add drop for the spring, which is February 5th. So in my example, I would have between November 22nd at 3 and 11:59 on February 5th to add drop swap courses. So it's really like an enrollment period because it's several months long that students can be making changes and adding and swapping and dropping courses. The enrollment appointment is just what's the earliest time in which I can engage with enrollment.
So the next question is, if a student is thinking about adding a minor, who do they speak to for guidance?
Yes. So minor advising, like I said, for thinking about second majors or certificate or minor advisors, typically minor advisors are advisors that work in that department. So if you're thinking about an economics minor, the folks who are advising for the economics minor are the same folks who are advising economics major. So sort of whatever advisor or advising team is engaging with that particular program. Again, the Guide to Undergraduate Programs will list the required courses for minors. The department websites will list required courses for minors. If students have questions about a minor, I usually would say reach out to the advisor that's associated with that program or that major. They are typically the folks that are also advising on the minors. Minor advising is often relatively straightforward in that it's typically 5 courses. It's relatively, I think, easy to sort of see what the requirements are and kind of follow along with it. Whereas many of the majors can be more complicated. Again, there's always exceptions, like music minor, for example, is much more complex. Students will engage in advising much more for something like that. But I would say familiarize yourself with the requirements online. If you have questions, particularly about how to access courses, like if there's certain courses that are restricted to only students in that major, et cetera, reach out to an advisor associated with that major or that program, and they should be able to talk about the minor as well.
The next question says, when does enrollment open? I think you've kind of answered this a couple of times, but it depends on the student.
Depends on the student. The other thing that I will mention that I didn't talk about is that your enrollment appointment is assigned based on your projected earned number of credits at the end of the fall. So we start with seniors, so students that have earned the most number of credits start earliest. So November 12th is the first day for seniors, and then we go through to our first year students, and the last day for them is, I believe it's the 25th of November. So some of our students, this is like very imminent for them, and some of our first year students, this is weeks away, and we sort of onboard students based on their kind of like credit seniority.
All right, so the next question is an advisor meeting required before registering?
Great question. Depends on a student's, what I'll call primary major. So again, we know some students have one major. You can consider that to be their primary major. Some students have 2 majors. We have this designation of a primary and a secondary major at UMass. So whatever a student's primary major is, either only major or whatever they've designated as their primary major, if they have two, different departments have different rules about this. Some departments require an advising appointment before registration. So they'll have, when I mentioned registration hold, some students may see as a registration hold an advising hold. It says you need to meet with an advisor before you can register for courses. Once a student meets with an advisor, the advisor removes that hold so they can enroll. And some departments don't require that. And they strongly encourage students to engage with advising, whether that's a peer advisor or a professional academic advisor. But it's not required before they enroll. So a student in theory could enroll and then could come back to their advisor if they have questions. So the best way to find that out is for a student to log into their Spire account and check their holds. If an advising appointment is required for them, there will be a registration hold there that will say you need to meet with an advisor before you register. Departments that put holds on also are typically really good about communicating that to students very early on, because they know that they're creating this barrier to registration. So if you're in a department that puts advising holds on, then you should also have received early in this process an email from an advisor or your school college talking to you about the hold, why they put that on there, how to meet with an advisor to get it removed.
All right, so how does a student know if a class has a prerequisite? That's part one of this question.
Yes, I was gonna say, I'm gonna demo this actually, because I feel like I have to show what it looks like in Inspire. Okay, so again, I get to this a slightly different way, but this was the advanced search that we were talking about earlier in terms of how to search for classes. I'm going to search by gen ed category to get a variety of things. So say I'm a student and I'm looking for a physical science gen ed class. I just want to see what the options are to satisfy this gen ed category. This will give me a list of courses that meet all of the criteria that I selected, in this case, looking for physical science gen ed classes. If a course has any kind of restriction, whether that's a prerequisite, it's only open to students in a certain major, it maybe requires a certain score on the math placement test. So there's anything that you need to know about this. It's not a course that's just open to anyone. Anyone can enroll. Excuse me. When you see in the class search, I'm looking at Astronomy 100. Under restrictions and notes, you'll see this yellow yes here. So there's something I need to know. That's flagging for me. There's something about this class and enrollment that I need to know. If I click on that, it takes me to this class details page. So it tells me a lot more information about the course on here, which also includes a course description. So if you're like, what is Astronomy 100? You can read about what the course entails. And then any kind of prerequisites, or it's restricted to certain students and only this particular major, will be under this restrictions and notes section. So this course doesn't have prerequisites. It just has information about attendance, and you need a good understanding of high school algebra to be successful, but you'll see prerequisites. So if this course required in another astronomy course in order to take it, you would see that listed here as well.
The next question says, what is the maximum number of courses allowed in one semester?
Yes. So for the maximum number of credits that students can enroll. So we really think about this as credits rather than courses, because some of our courses are 4 credits, many are 3, some are 1, some are 2. So we think about it in terms of number of credits rather than number of courses. 19 credits is the maximum that students can enroll in for a semester on their own. If students would like to take more than 19 credits, we have a petition that they can fill out, which is through their academic dean, we call it, who is a who is a administrator that lives within their central school college advising office. You can petition your academic dean to take more than 19 credits, and they'll, ask you sort of some of your rationale behind that. Why do you want to take more than 19 credits? And an academic dean will approve or deny that. So we do have students that take more than 19 credits, sort of very thoughtfully, and our academic deans consider that and students consider that, but 19 credits is the maximum that a student can self-enroll in.
So this is a follow-up to the first question I
Yeah.
asked about the student who was unable to take the English
Yeah.
course. So the question is really if they're not able to study hard enough and take all 5 courses and get 19 credits.
I see. Okay. So I think that my initial thought on that, like I'll sort of broaden this out a little bit of, because I feel like I see this sometimes with students with like 15 credits, right? There's many students where you're saying like, hey, to be on track to complete this major in 4 years, or to complete, to stay on track, et cetera, this is the number of credits that you need to take this semester. And students will be very frank, I think, with you as an advisor, often be like, that's not really doable for me for XYZ reason. Like, I will not be successful in that schedule. I know it has ramifications, but what do we need to do? So if any student's feeling like that, your advisor is telling you to take 19 credits, there are 15 credits, whatever it is, and I don't feel like that's doable for me, I would advise the student to go back to the advisor if they didn't have this conversation initially, and have an honest conversation about kind of whatever that's sparking for them. Like, I'm feeling like this is more credits than I can be successful in. I don't want to take on more classes than I feel like I can do well in. I understand that that might have implications, but can we talk through what other options might be for this? Like, what does it mean if I were to take 15 credits this semester? What would it mean if I were to take 12 credits this semester? Talk through kind of what are those future implications for this. Often I have seen students, if they feel like, the advisor is saying you need to take X number of credits this semester to stay on track for degree progress, and they feel like that's not really doable for me. I've often seen students say, okay, I'll take 12 or 15 credits this spring, and then maybe I'll take a summer course, or I'll take a winter course next year. So there might be ways to sort of think about winter and summer course selection. Often summer courses in particular are often really easily done at community college. So if kind of cost of summer courses is a concern, often those can be really good options. We do offer financial aid for summer courses if students take six or more credits. So there's aid options as well. So really thinking through some of those kind of like alternate term options can be helpful. I think as well, or thinking about, is it something just this semester that makes taking this number of credits not feasible? What would fall, if you added an extra class for fall, would that be doable or not? So I think really just being in conversation with the advisor and being honest about what feels doable and not doable for you, and kind of bringing them into this, like, okay, help me plan and think through what is a plan for me to be successful, sort of knowing all of these factors.
So the follow-up question to that was, how many questions how many credits do students typically take in a semester? Do most students take 19? This particular student took 16. So what is the typical credit amount?
I would say typical credit amount would be somewhere between 14 and 16. We sort of shoot for, like, if someone said like how many credits, like on average, like, quote unquote, should a student register for, my answer would be 15, which is really just the math of, if you want to graduate in 4 years, 8 semesters, 120 credits, it's 15 credits a semester. So really that's kind of that's the short answer. The long answer is most students do not take exactly 15 credits every semester. They take 13 credits one semester, 17 credits the other semester, in part because we have so many courses that are anywhere between 4 credits and 1 credit, that the math of it, sometimes it's a little bit below and sometimes it's a little bit above, but it still can often end up being just like, it's the same 5 classes. It's just the credit, the number ends up being a little bit lower or a little bit higher. I also think if we're thinking about students who are kind of thinking about engaging in winter and summer courses as well, I often think about the entire year being 30 credits. So, you know, whatever point from beginning of the fall semester to the end of the summer session too, if you're earning 30 credits in that time period, you're still on that same track, even if you're taking fewer credits in fall and spring. If you're making that up, quote unquote, with winter and summer, you can still very much be on track. So there's lots of different ways to do this in terms of if that 4-year graduation timeline, if that is the goal. But yeah, 15 is the sort of like to stay on track for 8 semesters, somewhere between 14 and 16 on average is what I typically see.
The next question was, how does a student know if a class has a required lab or discussion section?
Yes, that's also a great question. Let me find an example of this and I can show you what that looks like. All right. My example did work. Okay. So I did a search for Chemistry 111. This is a course that has a required lab. So you'll see up here, I'm scrolling, I'm looking at Chemistry 111, I'm looking at various sections. So this section, and then it will give you this, like it says like, oh, one lecture with this 5-digit number. Anything that says LEC is the lecture section. So that's sort of like the main course component of this. And you can see that there's multiple lecture sections. So I'm choosing between, I can do Monday, Wednesday, Friday at 10, Monday, Wednesday, Friday at 12, Tuesday, Thursday at 11. So I can choose different sort of main component sections. And then if I scroll down here, I'm going to see lab sections. So this is saying that these are all different lab sections that are then combined with the lecture section. So if I registered for this class, for example, Monday, Wednesday, Friday at 12:20 to 1:10, I would meet all 3 days at those times for the main sort of lecture component of the course. And then I'd also meet Mondays 2:30 to 5:30 for my lab component. So I can debate between lecture sections, and then I can also debate between which lab sections do I want to be in. So you'll see there's Monday options, there's Tuesday options as well. And discussion sections work the same way. If this were a course with a discussion section, it would just say DIS here instead of the lab. The good thing about this is that Spire will not let you enroll in a course without the discussion or lab if it's required. So if you go and you select the lecture section and you're like, I didn't scroll down far enough, I didn't know it had a discussion section, the next prompt on the page is going to list all the associated lab or discussion sections and say, choose one of these two. And then you choose that and it links them for you either in Schedule Builder or Inspire. So there's no way to accidentally only register for half of a course. The system will prompt you to register for both components. Same way, say you accidentally didn't realize, oh, I want to take this class Tuesdays 8:15 to 11:15, and you think that's the lecture, and you try to enroll in just the discussion or the lab, the system's then going to prompt you on the opposite end and say you have to pick a lecture section for this. So you can see it Inspire, but know that the fail-safe is there as well, that it will never let you register for half of a class.
All right, so we still have quite a few questions, but we are running short on time. And so, Alicia, I'm going to ask you,
Yeah.
what is the one thing that you want folks to remember after this conversation?
One thing I want folks to remember about this conversation, I think big picture from my perspective, sort of where I sit working at UMass and being a longtime advisor before I came to this role, is to say that like all of this system, I feel like when I talk about it, I'm reminded again and again of like, this only feels really intuitive to you because you've been swimming in these waters for 10 years. And much of this, when you try to describe it, feels very like, what is that? It's a lot of terminology. There's a lot of pieces to this puzzle, and a lot of it really depends. And I think it can feel a little bit like overwhelming at times. So I feel like my big takeaway is to say like, yes, that is true in many ways, but also to say that this idea of like demystifying all of these processes at UMass, walking students through them really is a university shared goal. So advisors are helping students do that. I've talked a lot about them and their work in this process. Our registrar's office colleagues are doing this. I talked a little bit about them, but also folks in the residence hall. So like our peer mentors for our first year students that are living with them on campus, our resident directors, et cetera, that are sort of living in all these different spaces on campus. Like everybody's really committed to this idea that the systems sometimes are challenging to navigate for the first time, and our job is to help students navigate those well and make sense and make meaning of all of those things. So to say that there is an amazing group of staff and faculty here that are very committed to helping students succeed, navigating these systems. We are here. We want to help students. Please, we want students to reach out to us with whatever questions they have. Reach out to us again if you feel like you didn't get the answer that you hope to get, or you're still confused about something. Continue to talk to us, ask us. We want to help. We want to navigate these things. I think is kind of my final piece. And again, if there's any ways that I can be helpful in terms of, often what I do, I feel like when I get emails from people saying, hey, my student has this question, I'm often not the person that can sort of solve the problem, but I'm the person that can get you to the person that can solve the problem. So please do feel free, if there's things that I can be helpful with or help you navigate or your student navigate, I'm always happy for people to reach out to me and kind of use some of my network to get those questions to the right people.
And Alicia, if it's okay with you, I'm going to put the general student success email
Sure.
in the chat
Yeah,
that
that's our
everybody
whole
has
team.
that.
Student success at UMass is our whole team, and
Mhm.
if I'm the best person to answer it, it will get to me or another member of our team.
Yeah, great. So I put that in the chat for hopefully everyone to see. And then if you still have questions, we want to make sure that you get those answered. But thank you all so much for joining us today. And Alicia, thank you so much for offering your insight and answering all of the family's questions. Like I said, we'll be back tomorrow talking with the Bursar, and so you can register for that in the email that we sent to you all. But again, we really appreciate you being here, and the recording will be available on our website and on our Facebook and on our YouTube, and so you have lots of ways to rewatch this. And so I hope you all have a great rest of your day, and go UMass.
Thanks so much, everyone.